Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be talking about something that I know a lot of dog owners are interested in,
Yeah,
and that's the long-term effects of radiation therapy on the brain.
absolutely.
Specifically, we're going to be looking at a recent research article all about cerebral microbleeds,
Right?
which are tiny bleeds in the brain
Mm-hmm.
in dogs that have undergone radiation for brain tumors.
It's a really important topic.
And this was published in the Journal of Veterinary Internal Medicine.
Okay.
So this is going to be the foundation for our deep dive today.
Sounds good.
Okay.
So this study
Yeah.
is a retrospective single-center observational study.
Okay.
So they looked back at the records of dogs that had already been treated
Right.
for intracranial tumors with radiation therapy
Got it.
at a specific veterinary hospital.
So they're not doing like a new experiment. They're just
Right.
analyzing data that's already been collected.
Exactly.
Okay.
And in this study, they looked at 34 dogs
Okay.
that met specific criteria.
So to be included in the study, each dog had to have at least 2 MRI scans.
Oh, okay.
And one of those scans had to be a susceptibility-weighted imaging.
Oh, so this is a special type of imaging.
Yeah, it's also called SWI.
Okay.
And it's particularly good at detecting these tiny microbleeds.
Interesting. So this SWI is really important then.
Yeah, because it lets us see
Yeah,
what's going on in the brain in a lot more detail.
gotcha.
And what they found was that 62%
Whoa.
of the dogs in the study developed at least one CMB.
Wow. 62%? That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot of dogs
Yeah, it is.
after they had radiation therapy.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we see this in human patients too
Oh, really?
that have brain tumors and have undergone radiation therapy.
Okay.
But this is the first time that this has been documented in dogs.
So this is like groundbreaking research then
Yeah, I think so.
in veterinary neurology.
I would agree with that.
So to better understand these CMBs, can we talk a little bit about the different radiation dose levels used in the study? Yeah, so they classified the doses into 3 groups.
Okay.
Low, which is less than 20 gray.
Okay,
Intermediate, which is between 20 and 30 gray.
got it.
And then high, which is greater than 30 gray.
So they essentially made like a map of the brain
Right.
showing the different radiation levels.
Exactly.
Oh.
And they looked at where the CMBs were
Yeah,
in relation to these doses.
yeah,
And they found that most of the microbleeds
yeah.
were in the areas that received the high doses of radiation.
So the higher the dose, the more likely they were to have these microbleeds.
Yeah, it seems that way.
That makes sense,
Right.
intuitively.
And they also found that the number of CMBs increased over time.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they saw an average increase of about 14%
Wow.
each month after the radiation therapy.
So it's not just the initial dose,
Yeah.
it's also like a cumulative effect
Exactly.
over time.
Yeah, it seems like the damage from the radiation keeps building up
Yeah.
over time, and that leads to more of these microbleeds.
So that makes a lot of sense, but what does this mean for the dogs?
Right.
Are these microbleeds actually causing problems for them?
Yeah, that's the burning question.
Or are they just something that we're seeing on the scans?
Yeah, and to answer that, we need to look at the clinical significance of these CMBs.
Okay, so let's dig into that then.
All right. Well, they found that most of the dogs that developed CMBs
Right.
after radiation therapy
Mhm.
didn't actually show any obvious signs of neurological problems.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they were, for the most part, clinically stable.
So even though they had these bleeds
Right.
in their brain, they weren't necessarily showing any symptoms.
Exactly.
But this was a retrospective study.
That's right.
So it's possible that maybe they miss some subtle changes.
Yeah, it's possible.
Or maybe it just wasn't documented.
Yeah, exactly.
And not all dogs in the study had an MRI before radiation therapy.
You're right. That's one of the limitations of the study.
Yeah.
Ideally, we would have a baseline MRI for every dog, so we could see if they had any microbleeds before the radiation.
Right, because microbleeds can also happen just from aging.
Exactly, or other health conditions.
So it's hard to know for sure
Right.
if the microbleeds were there before
Yeah.
or if they developed because of the radiation.
Exactly.
One thing they did find was that the
Yeah.
pattern of the CMBs
Right.
was really interesting. They were clustered around the area
Right.
that got the highest dose of radiation.
Exactly. And that suggests that the radiation played a big role.
Okay, so even though there might be other factors,
Right.
it seems like the radiation is a major cause.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable conclusion.
So how do these microbleeds actually form?
Well, the study suggests that radiation
Yeah.
can damage the lining of blood vessels,
Okay,
and that makes them more likely to leak.
so the radiation weakens the blood vessels.
Yeah, you can think of it that way.
And then they start to leak.
Exactly. And when that happens, blood components leak into the brain tissue,
Okay.
and then the body tries to clean that up.
Okay.
And that leads to a buildup of this substance called hemosiderin.
And that's what we're seeing on the SWI scans, right?
Exactly. Hemosiderin shows up as dark spots on the scans.
Wow. So each of those spots
Yeah,
is a tiny little bleed.
that's right.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is.
So what does this mean for the dogs long term?
Right.
Should we be worried about their neurological health?
Well, that's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, this study doesn't really give us a clear answer.
Okay.
We know that most of the dogs were clinically stable,
Right.
but that doesn't necessarily mean that the
Yeah.
microbleeds are harmless.
Right. So we need more research.
Exactly. We need more research.
To really understand this.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like we've opened up a whole new area of research
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
in veterinary neurology.
Absolutely.
So where do we go from here?
Well, I think one important next step
Yeah.
is to do prospective studies.
Okay.
So we can follow dogs over time,
Right. Yeah.
both before and after radiation therapy.
And that would give us a better idea
Right.
of how these microbleeds develop.
Exactly, and how they affect the dogs neurologically.
But that would be really challenging to do,
Yeah, it would be.
especially ethically,
Absolutely.
which is hard to balance.
The need for knowledge
Right.
with the well-being of the animals.
Exactly.
But that's always a challenge in research.
Yeah.
So what can dog owners do in the meantime?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I think the most important thing is awareness.
Okay.
If your dog is going to have radiation therapy,
Yeah.
talk to your vet about this study.
Yeah.
Ask about SWI scans.
Hmm.
And if they're appropriate for your dog.
And are there any red flags
Yeah.
that owners should be looking out for?
Yeah. Any changes in your dog's behavior or neurological function?
Okay.
Things like changes in their gait, coordination, vision, or even their cognitive abilities.
So even though most of the dogs in the study were okay,
Right.
it's still important to be vigilant.
Absolutely. Early detection is key
Right.
if there are any problems.
Okay.
And don't hesitate to contact your vet if you have any concerns.
This has been so helpful.
Yeah,
I feel like I've learned a lot about these microbleeds
me too.
and how they can affect dogs after radiation therapy.
It's definitely a complex issue,
Yeah.
but I think we've made some good progress today.
Before we wrap up,
Yeah.
is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think the main takeaway here
Okay.
is that this study is just the beginning.
Okay.
We still have a lot to learn about these microbleeds and
Yeah.
how they affect dogs long term.
Right.
But it's important to remember that radiation therapy has both risks and benefits.
Right.
And it's really important to talk to your vet about those.
Yeah.
So you can make the best decision for your dog.
I completely agree.
So yeah, I think that's about it.
Well, this has been a really fascinating deep dive
It has.
into the world of cerebral microbleeds
Yeah,
and their impact on dogs after radiation therapy.
definitely.
So for everyone listening out there,
Yeah.
stay curious, keep asking questions,
Absolutely.
and keep learning about animal health. Wow, this has been a really interesting journey
Yeah.
into the brain,
Yeah.
all the effects
Right.
that radiation can have on it.
It really makes you think about all the stuff that
Yeah.
we still don't know about the
And
brain.
like these tiny little microbleeds,
Yeah.
who knew that those
Yeah.
could potentially have such a big impact?
Yeah, it's amazing how much
Yeah.
we're still learning.
Yeah. It's like we're explorers.
I like that analogy,
Yeah.
going into uncharted territory.
Yeah. And every new study is like a little flashlight showing us a little bit more.
Yeah, and hopefully, with each new discovery,
Yeah.
we can find ways to take better care of our pets.
Exactly. Because
Yeah.
that's what it's all about. So this research about these microbleeds and radiation,
Yeah.
it really shows how dedicated we are to learning more
Yeah, it's really inspiring to see
Yeah.
how far we've come in veterinary medicine.
and how much we still want to learn.
Absolutely.
So I think we've covered a lot today
We have.
about cerebral microbleeds
Mhm.
and how they can be caused by radiation therapy.
And what it all means for the dogs.
Yeah, it's been a really fascinating deep dive
It really has.
into a really complex topic.
Absolutely.
So to everyone listening out there,
Yeah.
keep those brains working,
Keep learning.
stay curious, and keep asking questions.
And most importantly,
Yeah.
keep loving your pets.
From Vet Neurojar,
Yes.
keep those minds-inspired hearts light and tails wagging.